Great. Welcome to the Manhattan Art and Antique Center, and it's wonderful to have you exhibiting as part of MAAC on the Map. Can you tell us a little bit about each of the works that you have here today and what was the inspiration behind them?
Well, most of the work here, they were done over the course of a couple of years. Usually I'll work on something and then set it aside for a while. Some works will sit and maybe just sit in the corner of my studio for a couple of years even before I really know how to finish it. I would say while each piece are, about individual and specific things, the sort of commonality to all of them would be that I really want the viewer, when they look at my work, to sort of have a sense of, to sort of be horrified but also find the work hilarious. I think ultimately it's a reflection of the world we live in. So I like to throw in sort of pop cultural references. You probably find a lot of sneakers in almost all the works. This is alluding to, of course, sort of like the consumerism of our society, certain blue chip brands, just like there are certain blue chip galleries, and I wanted to sort of make a comment on that. There'll be little bits of art historical references throughout, so like in that painting right there, it's actually part of what's being referenced is an Edgar Degas pastel drawing of these bathers. And I really, Degas is a big hero of mine, and I wanted to sort of include the work, but also sort of address like the oppressive nature that art history has on contemporary artists. We're all sort of bound by certain qualities, whether we like it or not. If I throw a couple white and red stripes in the corner of a painting, instantly the political comes to mind, and perhaps people will make connections to Jasper Johns, whether I want them to or not. But overall, I would say that, to make people laugh, but to also make people think, to sort of question the world we live in, are the primary goals for my paintings. Of all the works here, this is probably the oldest, from the summer of 2014. And this guy right here was, where I was thinking about, things like, well, I'd really like to paint my cats, but not necessarily in the sort of romantic, sentimental way, right? So what's the best way to do it, but then kind of undermine that sentimentality? Well, I can paint one of my cats licking her ass. That's probably the best way to kind of subvert that entire notion. I think a little bit about sort of current events, the things going on in the world outside. I wanted to sort of have a suggestion of violence with the shape of the airplane, the fighter jet, but again, to undermine and neuter it by replacing it with a print of flowers, which is more of a symbol for life rather than of death. Again, I'm constantly thinking about the contemporary world and consumerism, so there are many elements that are lifted straight out of, say, IKEA catalogs. I love doing that. And then furthermore, I was thinking about sort of like media, mass media, the news and current events that we get. And I was reading somewhere, I think it was in Wired or one of the science magazines, where the static, or what we call the popcorn, is actually what you're looking at is a visual remnant of the energy left over from the Big Bang. And so in many ways that was like really profound to me, because that's something that nobody would ever sit there and stare at a TV and watch. And yet, compared to all the other BS you see on TV, that's probably the most profound and most life-affirming, more so than much of the reality TV that we see. So in that way, I kind of wanted to present something that, again, was sort of contradictory. And that's something that, I try to do a lot in my work, is to set you up in one way and then try to undermine it and to sort of subvert it in another way. And then, there's sort of playing with different textures, from making the rug with just a paint marker. I do a lot of drawing with paint in my paintings, so using like Sharpie and other companies, they have like markers that have oil paint in them, so it's like you're drawing and you're painting, from more like traditional ways of painting. I was trained academically, to like flat areas that are just sort of bare, sort of like cotton candy colors, to like the texture of, say, using a marker to make points. And I'm okay with sort of this like collaged look in the end. I think, when you think about contemporary experience in the world, our experience of the world is sort of mediated into these little compartments, these little sections. So I'm okay with my paintings not necessarily being linear. I'm okay with them being non-linear.
Great. And anything else you want to tell about maybe other paintings here today?
Well, for example, like this one's called Bad Neighbors, and I was specifically thinking sort of about how we might be perceived outside of our own borders. I didn't want to make it sort of overtly political, but I did want to suggest to it. So the little bit of the red and white stripes in the upper left corner certainly allude to that. I was thinking about consumerism here once again. Wanted to also, as usual, suggest elements of violence in there, with the foot coming in and kicking someone in the groin, and then the puppy / man hybrid creature is also holding a gun, but I wanted to undermine that once again by making it like a child's toy gun rather than just sort of a fully descriptive, like a quote-unquote real gun. I was thinking more about like the herd mentality that we tend to have, and so like I don't know if you call pigs a herd or not, but the group of pigs in the back following was kind of me thinking about that.
Beautiful. And just a question, how do you create your work? Do you have a specific routine, a number of hours? Do you listen to music?
I do. So I have a basic vision when I start out, but I've been working long enough to know that what you end up with is never going to be exactly like what you envisioned. And I think that for a long time I fought against that, which was the wrong thing. And I think how I became more successful was to actually work on a piece, let it sit there for a little while, and learn to listen to it. And so rather than always me imposing, oh, I got to do X, Y, and Z to the painting, it's sitting there thinking about it and listening to, okay, well, this is how I can maybe undermine this passage or undercut that or subvert something like that. So a painting like this one's called Doggy Style. And so like it started out as just like in the background this very colorful atomic nuclear blast, right? But I wanted to do it in these sort of over-the-top, super saturated, again, sort of these cotton candy colors to undermine that threat of violence. And then I was just thinking about like how animalistic, how sort of bestial we really are underneath it all. So to call it Doggy Style refers to, like, the dogs here are us, really. We're in my opinion, we're not that far removed in many ways. And many of our base impulses and decisions are predicated on these kinds of things. So the airplane shape, again, was sort of to allude to that violence. And I wanted, again, sort of like the violence of an explosion, but to sort of undermine it by having it sort of be like a piñata exploding instead, with these bright, colorful just splatters of paint rather than, say, candy coming out. And then, I wanted to allude to like half of those 3D glasses you would wear to, again, suggest that, we're not, to question really, are we really seeing everything clearly at all times? So that was sort of what I was thinking for that piece.
Beautiful. And before we move on, would anyone here like to ask any questions?
Yeah, I want to know how you managed to the transparency with the light.
Oh, with the light?
So pretty.
I literally just went and really thinned out the paint. So
Nice.
I tend to work like a lot of my paintings. I start them in acrylic. It's cheaper, it's quicker, and it's also it dries much faster, right? So at the beginning, when I'm making certain loose decisions, I might put something down and then change my mind. So I do it in acrylic. So I even painted a camouflage pattern underneath this whole canvas at first. And I wanted to brush oil on top and just kind of cover it, but not completely. Again, to suggest that threat of violence is just underneath it all. And then specifically here, this was just, I painted in the lamp. It was lifted straight out of an IKEA catalog, and then you just go with a little painter's tape on either side, and then make sure the edge is like sealed, and then you thin out the paint, and then you just put it on like you're putting on a glaze basically.
Nice.
So thank you.
Very good.
Any other questions? That's it. Great. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
That
you.
was
Thank you.
great.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Awesome.
I love it.
Beautiful, right?